Hello, everybody. Today is April 19th, 2024. Today we are working on Basic Block 15. The block that we chose is the Spinning Star by Delaware Quilts. The link for that pattern can be found on my community tab. However, I have recreated the block with a few adjustments on my EQ8 program so I can give you cutting directions and share this pattern with you. You will need 4 different fabrics of different values along with a background fabric. Now for the blocks that I'm working on, I have chosen to use a light gray by AGF as my background, and that's because the finished quilt is going to be a child's quilt. And I decided to use a light gray for that. So again, you will need 4 total different fabric color choices, whatever you choose, whatever color you like, and it will be perfectly fine. I'm going to set this aside and I am going to give you cutting instructions. Now, because of the way my brain works and it likes to be a little organized, I always label my pieces if it is more than 3. That way, I am not confused when I am sewing these together or making cuts and not frustrating myself. So for our background fabric, which will be letter A, you will need 4 4.5 inch squares. You will need 1 5.5 inch square, and that will be B. For letter C, and this is going to be, letter C will be your biggest star point. So letter C is 5 inches. You will need 2 of them. D will be 1 5.5 inch square, and E will be 1 4.5 inch square. So again, A for your background, you will need 4 4.5 inch squares. B, you will need 1 5.5 inch square, and that's background. Your C, you will need 2 5 inch squares. D, you will need 1 5.5 inch square, and letter E will be 4.5 inch squares. And I am going to set this aside, and we are going to start with our letter C, which is will be your biggest start point. I want you to put those together as close as you can, lining it all up. And we are simply going to cut from a diagonal line from one corner to the next corner. So now we should have 4 units that look like this. And I'm going to set that aside. And that's letter C. For fabric D and B, I'm going to take my D fabric and my B fabric. I'm going to lie them on top of each other, straighten them up. We are going to make 2 cuts on the diagonal here. So our first cut, we are going to go corner to corner. And very carefully, you're going to lift that ruler, making certain not to move anything, and gently placing it back down. Try not to disturb the fabric. And we are going to make another cut on the opposite corner, going diagonal. And you should have 8 sections that look like this. Okay, so what I want you to do now is we are going to make a triangle. And let me get this together. You have to kind of play with it because what I'm looking for is there we go. I want the printed fabric on the right hand side and your background fabric on the left hand side. So let's see if we can repeat this step. And once you get the first one laid out, it's really easy. Trying to make it on the camera backwards is a little difficult sometimes. So you are going to make 4 units that look exactly like this. And I apologize, it's early in the morning. I don't think I've had enough coffee yet. So you are going to make 4 units that look like this with your printed on the right, your background on the left. You are just going to flip this and sew it. And I will say that it always helps that if you are, when you sew this block, sew from the flat edge. If you try to sew from the point, some sewing machines have a tendency to eat that fabric. A leader and an ender helps in that process, and a leader and an ender is simply a piece of fabric that you sew, you put under your sewing machine, and you start with this, and then you feed the rest of your fabric through. And I do have on one of the other earlier tutorials how we did that. So you're going to take a 1/4 inch seam on all 4 units like this. And we're going to go with stop and sew these now. All right, I have sewn my 4 units. They now look like this. I did press them open, and you can press to the dark fabric or the background fabric. However, just be consistent. If you're going to press one way, press all 4 blocks the same way. So we've got that done. Now we are going to take our fabric C that we cut in half on the diagonal that we have 4 of. And we are simply going to assemble these units together. And it will look like this to make a square. Excuse me while I put this together. They are all going to look like this. You will have 4 units. And we are going to sew these units together. Now, when we sew these units together, we are going to make sure that the points, this bottom point, lines up as best as possible. And that will make it easier when we have to trim the blocks up. And if you need to, just go ahead and stick a pin to keep it together. And it will not line up perfectly depending on your stitch length, if you've taken a little bit of a quarter of an inch or a scant inch, and that is the reason why we want to just make sure those points right here are as aligned as possible. Now we're going to go ahead and sew all 4 units together. Okay, we are back. We have sewn our 4 units together. It should look something like this. And now we have to square our blocks up. And what we're going to do is take our ruler, and again, I'm using my 12.5 Creative Grids ruler that I'm using for the complete series of the Sampler Sew Along. And if you have a different 4.5-inch ruler, a smaller ruler that works for you, you are more than welcome to use that. So what I am doing is I'm aligning my diagonal line on my 4.5-inch mark. We are trimming these to 4.5. I'm aligning my diagonal line and trying to center at the 2.25 mark, because that's half of 4.5. And I am simply going to trim my block up, turn that around, aligning again. And trimming this to 4.5. I did do my other 3 units, so you should have a total of 4 units. And so now we're going to start block assembly. Pretty easy, nothing intimidating. Take your time while you're doing it. It's not a race. And if it's a little crooked, it's okay. Right? So we are going to take our E fabric and place it directly in the center. Then we are going to take our A fabrics, our 4.5-inch backgrounds, and place it on all 4 corners. And then we are going to build our blocks. And your darkest fabric or your longest star point is going to face your bottom left-hand corner, all the way around. We are just going to do bottom left-hand corner, and left-hand corner. And your block will look like this. And now we are simply working with the 9 patch, and we have done this step before multiple times. So we are just going to go ahead and sew our units together, flipping it over, over, and over, taking our 1/4-inch seam. Once those are connected, you're going to add and take your 1/4-inch seam all the way down. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, I have sewn my 3 rows together. They now look like this. I have pressed it out, pressing out on my top and bottom and towards the middle on my middle row. And the only reason why quilters ever say much about where to press, it's just so those seams nest nicely when you're sewing the rows together. and that you reduce some of the bulk that you get. So now we're just going to assemble the last two items. We're going to put it like this. We're going to nest that middle seam. If you have to put a pin in it, you can go ahead and pin it. And you can feel it kind of lock in place when you're nesting it. Just like that. Once that row is sewn together, you're simply going to take this row and repeat that same step, taking a 1/4 inch seam. We're going to go ahead and do that now. We're almost there. Alrighty, we have completed our block assembly, and this is it. This is the spinning star. You can make it any way you wish. If you have scrap fabric, you can make your star points all different. You can use different backgrounds. Your block, your quilt, make it the way that it is going to make you happy in the end. And that is it. Our next tutorial will be released soon for block 16. But we hope to see you now this Monday night. This coming Monday night, we will not be having the sampler chat and sew on my channel, but I believe that they will be meeting at Rita's just to share it. We are taking a week off. But anyway, enjoy the block. Enjoy your sewing. Be blessed. Be kind and keep sewing. Thank you.